reminded all of us.
So. Oh, I didn't. And they flashed up and I forgot. Never mind. Yeah, I'm not going to read it again. You've heard. Yeah, thank you, Avril. I did forget, but I was thinking of all the women who are living all around the world, some on their own and some with their families. And I think we hopefully are keeping everything going. And I feel that we have an inner strength and we have to keep everybody going. And especially to the women who are on their own in these times, I think they're even braver than the ones who have partners. That was my thought to start the meeting, that we're all women of valor.
We don't have choices, do we?
No, we don't. We don't. But nobody seems to, like you said, Susan. You just said we don't have choices. Yeah. That's what women say, and get on with it.
That's right.
Right. Without any further ado, I want to wish you all Chodesh Tov, a good new month, and let's hope that maybe it'll bring some better things for us here in Israel. And I'm going to invite Vivian who's going to do the introduction to the month of Av.
Oh. Thank you. Right. We are now entering the month of Av, Father, also known as Menachem Av, Father Consoler, saddest month in the Jewish year, during which tragedy after tragedy befalls the Jewish people. The astrological sign for Av is Leo, the lion, fierce, relentless, and terrifying. The northern kingdom of Israel had already been captured in 722 BCE by the Assyrians, and its people carried off into exile. On the 17th of Tammuz, 586 BCE, during the period of the First Temple, the walls of Jerusalem were breached by Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian king, and in 70 BCE, during the period of the Second Temple, by the Romans. Hebrew literature defines this period as Bein HaMitzarim, between the straits, a time of greatest crisis, as well as the 3 weeks of rebuke, a time of ever-increasing suffering, culminating on the 9th of Av with the burning of both temples and the exile of the Israelites. Initially, regarding the destruction of the First Temple, dates of the 1st, 7th, and 10th of Av were recorded, but Josephus, when describing the destruction of the Second Temple, states that both temples fell on the same date, namely the 10th of Av. The Talmud reconciles the different dates, stating that the First Temple was set alight on the 9th of Av, and the Second Temple burnt down on the 10th. Hence, it was decided that as the conflagration had commenced on the 9th of Av, that date would commemorate both these events. The Talmud asks, why was the First Temple destroyed? Because of 3 sins: idolatry, sexual indiscretions, and murder. The Second Temple, when the people were involved in Torah, mitzvot, and acts of kindness, why was it destroyed? Because they harbored baseless hatred towards each other. A famous midrash tells the story of Pachter and Bar Pachter, describing how baseless hatred between the 2 men caused the destruction of the Second Temple and the exile of the Jewish people from their homeland. 2 of our greatest prophets, Isaiah and Jeremiah, spent their lives warning the people of Israel and Judah of the calamities that would befall them if they turned away from the one true God. However, to no avail. Isaiah warned against trusting Egypt, saying, "The strength of Pharaoh shall be your shame, and the refuge in the shadow of Egypt shall be your disgrace." Jeremiah, standing at the gate of the temple, called out to the people, "Act justly towards one another. Oppress not the stranger, the orphan, the widow. Shed not innocent blood." But they would not listen. Having singled out the 9th of Av as the most important fast day, symbolizing these tragic events, the rabbis decided that additional tragedies suffered by the Jewish people would also be recorded as occurring on that day. Here is a summary of some of the most notable events. Following the destruction of the Second Temple, Roman rule on the land of Israel was cruel and harsh, and the Jewish leader Shimon bar Kokhba of Pachter formed a large army to fight and shake off the Roman yoke, inflicting heavy losses on Hadrian Caesar and his army, who had been besieging the city for 3 years. Rabbi Akiva, on seeing Bar Kokhba, declared, "A star has come forth from Jacob. Bar Kokhba has come forth from Jacob. He is the Mashiach." However, Rabbi Yochanan ben Torta disagreed. And tragically, on Tisha B'Av, 135 BCE, the final battle for Betar took place, and the Jewish rebels were brutally slaughtered, as were all the inhabitants of that stronghold. Furthermore, 1 year after their conquest of Betar, the Romans plowed over the Temple Mount. In the concluding portion of the book Numbers, Moses recorded the 42 journeys traveled by the Israelites in the desert prior to their entering the Promised Land, and the Torah mentions the death of Aaron, the high priest, a lover and pursuer of peace, in the year 1273 BCE, the only time that the Torah mentions an exact date of death. They journeyed from Chodesh and camped at Mount Hor at the edge of the land of Edom. Aaron, the high priest, ascended Mount Hor at God's behest and died there on the first day of the 5th month, in the 40th year of the children of Israel's exodus from Egypt. That date was the 1st of Av. The punishment suffered by the Israelites for their complaints and lack of unity following Aaron's passing was the disappearance of the clouds of glory, which had protected and kept the Israelite camp close to each other. Once they disappeared, the camp was vulnerable to outside attacks, which soon occurred. In the year 1313 BCE, the Israelites arrived at the Promised Land, and the Lord said to Moses, "Send men to explore Canaan, which I'm giving to the Israelites. Send one leader from each of their ancestors' tribes." Among them was Caleb, son of Jephunneh, from the tribe of Judah, and Hoshea, son of Nun, from the tribe of Ephraim. Moses changed his name to Joshua. They returned on the 9th of Av and gave their report, stating that although it was a land flowing with milk and honey, they would never be able to conquer it, as the people were too strong. Only Caleb and Joshua urged the people to listen to Moses, but to no avail. The Israelites spent that evening, the 9th of Av, wailing, saying that they would rather return to Egypt than be slaughtered by the Canaanites, showing their lack of belief in the Lord. Consequently, the Lord decreed that they would spend another 40 years wandering in the desert until that generation died out. In 1240, a Jewish convert to Christianity, Nicolas Donin, who had translated the Talmud into French, sent a list of 35 charges against the Talmud to Pope Gregory IX, thus inaugurating the Disputation of Paris, where 4 of the foremost rabbis in France were invited to defend the Talmud against these charges. This set into place a train of events culminating in June 1242 with the burning of around 10,000 volumes of Hebrew manuscripts, all of which were handwritten, as the printing press had not yet been invented. And this was apparently witnessed by the Maharam of Rothenburg, who wrote about the incident. Furthermore, in the year 1290, following the harrowing slaughter of Jewish families in Clifford's Tower, York, England, King Edward expelled the Jews. They had been encouraged to live in England by William the Conqueror, who took the English throne after his victory at the Battle of Hastings in 1066. However, hatred had been rising against the Jewish people, who were legally the property of the king, reliant on his mercy, and only allowed to be moneylenders with no other trade. Christian euphoria had been rising in the country with the commencement of the Crusades in the 11th, 12th, and 13th centuries. These were military expeditions thought of as pilgrimages to the Holy Land by European Christians aimed at putting an end to the spread of Muslim rule. King Edward raised money for his expedition by taxing his subjects, and most heavily his Jewish subjects. Finally, unable to squeeze any more riches and worn out by his people's hatred of the Jews, he issued an edict expelling them on Tisha B'Av of that year. In the year 1478, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella announced the commencement of the Spanish Inquisition, whereby all heretics would be rooted out by the Catholic Church. Terrible suffering was endured by the Jewish population, thousands of whom died, while others converted, some continuing to secretly carry out their Jewish practices. Then in 1492, the monarchs conquered the Nasrid Kingdom of Granada, finally ending Muslim rule over Granada, which had lasted 800 years. Shortly after this, they issued the Alhambra Decree, ordering the expulsion of all Jews from Spain by the 9th of Av. It is believed that around 40,000 Jews emigrated, some to the Ottoman Empire, which welcomed them, and others to Europe, where many endured further suffering. 5 years later, Portugal also banished all Jews from her kingdom. And it should be noted that in 1968, Spain officially revoked the Alhambra Decree, and both Spain and Portugal have offered Sephardic Jews the right to claim citizenship. The 9th of Av, 1914, is the date on which Germany declared war on Russia, thrusting the world into global warfare. Many consider World War II as a continuation of the Great War, as the First World War was called, and the 9th of Av was chosen to commemorate both these tragic events in the history of the Jewish people. The human cost of these wars was around 45 million dead in the First World War and over 60 million in World War II, with the Holocaust claiming over 6 million Jews. I'm now talking about the observance of mourning laws. From the 17th of Tammuz, no festivals are held or marriages celebrated, added to which from the 1st of Av, people are instructed to abstain from meat and wine. The Shabbat prior to the fast of Tisha B'Av is called Shabbat Chazon, the Shabbat of vision, taken from the opening chapter of the book of Isaiah, in which he strongly admonishes the people for their sins and warns of the catastrophe to come. However, Rabbi Levi Yitzhak of Berdichev wrote that on the Shabbat of vision, each and every one of us is granted a vision of the third and final temple, a vision that, to paraphrase the Talmud, though we do not ourselves see, our souls see. This vision evokes profound response in us, even if we are not consciously aware of the cause of our sudden inspiration. On the 8th of Av, a normal meal is eaten at lunchtime, but prior to the fast, it is customary to eat a simple meal with the symbolic mourner's egg as the main course. Fast commences at sunset and ends at nightfall the next day. Lights are lowered in the synagogue and curtains and covers removed from the Holy Ark and reader's desk. Congregants sit on the floor or low stools and do not greet each other. Furthermore, no talit or tefillin are worn until the afternoon service. In the evening and sometimes in the morning, the book of Echa, the book of Lamentations, is read, describing the desolation of Jerusalem and the suffering of her inhabitants, as are Kinot, Lamentations, religious poems, many by the Spanish poet-philosopher Judah Halevi, describing the tragedy suffered by the Jewish people themselves. They must repent, cleanse themselves of sin, and return purified to God, who will have mercy and redeem them again. In spite of all the calamitous events recalled on Tisha B'Av, it is described as a festival, and classical Jewish sources state that hope for the Messiah will be born on Tisha B'Av when the temple is destroyed. This is the manifestation of our trust in God and eternal optimism that out of bad, good will emerge. And voila, here we have the 15th of Av, a festival of love and fertility, which begins at sunset on the night of the 14th, when according to our lunar calendar, there is a full moon. This event was first mentioned in the Mishnah at the end of the 2nd century, when Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel stated, "There were no better days for people of Israel than the 15th of Av and Yom Kippur, since on these days the daughters of Israel, Jerusalem, go out dressed in white and dance in the vineyards. What were they saying? Young man, consider whom you choose to be your wife. It is also said that on the 15th of Av, the tribe of Benjamin was allowed to intermarry with other tribes, having been banned from doing so after the terrible incident of the concubine of Gibeah. Furthermore, on the 15th of Av, years after the massacre at Pachter, permission was granted for burial to take place. The bodies had not decomposed. Rabbi Matna explains, the 15th of Av is the day when permission was granted for those killed at Pachter to be buried. On the day when the slain of Pachter were allowed burial, the benediction, who is good and does good, was instituted as the fourth blessing of Birkat HaMazon. Who is good because the bodies did not putrefy, and does good because they were allowed burial. Following the return of Ezra and Nehemiah with around 42,360 Jews from Babylon, reconstruction of the temple was inaugurated. However, the land had been stripped of trees and sacrifices could only be carried out with dry wood, namely wood cut before the 15th of Av, following which the sun grew weaker and wood would get damp and possibly become worm-ridden, thus making it unfit for ceremonial use. 2 families volunteered to bring enough dry wood for sacrifices by the 20th of Av, on which date enough wood had been collected, including some stored for the following year. Who were the 2 families? Research has shown that one of the families were the descendants of King David, and the other family descendants of Yoav ben Sruya. For this special deed, the 20th of Av is celebrated. The building of the Second Temple was completed in the year 516 BCE, and the following month the people were able to celebrate Passover in the temple for the first time since the return of the exiles. I should like to conclude this overview of the month of Av with the words of the prophet Zechariah, who lived during the time of the rebuilding of the Second Temple. He prophesied, the cities of Judah would spread through prosperity and God's presence would be felt in the holy city, declaring that old men and women shall yet sit on the broad squares of Jerusalem, every man with his staff in his hand for age. The broad squares of the city shall be full of boys and girls playing in them.
Thank you, Vivian, for such a thorough research into the month of Av. I think we all greatly appreciate that. Susan, I don't know if we have time for that
Little extra.
extra. The rabbi should be here shortly, but I'm
here.
Oh, wonderful! There you are. Perfect timing.
I'm always on time. You know that.
I know.
8:30. I'm never late.
Okay, so without further ado, then I will introduce our rabbi to anybody who doesn't know who Rav Ido is. Oh, so excuse me, I'm being there's a small echo in the back of the room which is saying Dr. Rabbi Ido Pachter. You know where that's coming from. It's coming from Jeffrey. He's been such support for us who are sitting at home and Zooming everywhere during this difficult period, which seems to be going on forever, that we just want to thank you for that and for coming in to talking to us. Do you want me to share the screen now, or do you want to give an introduction first?
I will share it. Okay. I think.
Oh, you can share it.
Can you make me the host or co-host?
Oh, God. Now that's beyond me. Where's Andrea? I can put it up for you.
No. Just go to my name and you see there is a button.
Yes.
More. So press on this button, and if you see make host or something like that, or co-host.
Wait a minute. Where, Andrea? Tell me where. I can't see. I've got
That's
remove.
Right. Click on participants on the bottom.
Yes, ma'am.
And
Yes.
you'll see the rabbi's name on the right side.
Yes.
Yes. Wait a minute. Let me get to him. Yes.
That's all right. Take your time.
Yes.
You may have solved a huge problem for us, Rabbi.
Why? You didn't know
Because
that.
we
Right,
didn't.
and I'm going on more. Yes, I want to thank everybody to know that Andrea has been my support while I put it up on the screen, which I'm not going to do now. So I've gone into more. Yes, make host.
Make
Okay.
host.
That's it.
Oh, co-host.
Well, you're the host now.
No, no, okay, so now I can mute you all. Yeah.
Yay!
Woohoo! Wait, no, I don't want to mute you because I want to hear you, to hear your comments or questions if you have.
If anybody doesn't know how to unmute themselves, you just press. If you're on a computer, you just press the space bar. If you're on an iPad, what do you do there? I have no idea how you unmute yourself on an iPad.
You just press on the button or this symbol of microphone there in the participants, I think.
Okay.
And that's how you can. You press on your name and then there is unmute or something like that.
Okay. Do you want questions during or after? Or
during and after.
okay. So
Both.
there you are. It's a free for all, but let him
Both.
speak first.
Yes, both. I'm a rabbi. I'm an expert in saying yes, yes to anybody and anything and for anything. So for everything. So thank you for the invitation, and I'm very happy to be here with you. And I'm sure, and I guess that you can understand why I'm so happy to be with you because of our subject today. The subject today of our limud, of our the lecture or whatever, the presentation, is why it's so important that women will learn Torah. I will share with you the presentation that they made. Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Can you see it? Do you see it? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So why it is important that women learn Torah? Why do I want to speak about this with you today? Why it's so important to me to speak with you about the importance of women's learning Torah? And the reason is something that happened, I read it in the media 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago. There was a petition against the chief rabbinate. I think the organization, a team and women organizations petitioned against the chief rabbinate and demanded in this petition that the chief rabbinate will let them take the exams or the tests of the rabbinate. They wanted to take the same as exams as the men take, the rabbis take when they want to become rabbis. And they claim, they said, we learn Torah, we learn halachot, we learn in midrashot, we have special bete midrash, and we want to be tested as exactly as men. They didn't say, they said it very clearly. They don't want to get ordination from the chief rabbinate. They don't want to be ordained by them. They just want to take the exams in order to use it when they want to go to work or somewhere. And when they show these exams, it's equivalent to first degree or something like that. That's what they demanded. That's what they asked from the chief rabbinate. And of course, you can imagine that the chief rabbinate and the chief rabbis refused to their request. And they didn't have any choice but to appeal to the Supreme Court against the chief rabbinate. And then the chief rabbinate gave their answer to the court. And Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef, who our Rishon LeZion, who's the chief rabbi, he said these words. He used these words in when he responded to the petition. He said, I translated it in Google Translate, so I'm sorry if it's not the precise translation, but I believe we can understand it. He said these words: suppose we do a test for them, means to the women, separately. It will not be mixed. It will have special exams, a special test for the ladies, for the women. Okay, are they learning all this? And then he said, yes, maybe so. Today there are talented women studying accounting and all sorts of things. Okay, he said, so I understand, if I understand him correctly, he said, yes, of course, I believe that they do learn it. Something had changed in the status of the women in the world. Today, they do not stay all day at their homes. That's why they go out, they learn, they are very talented, they learn halachot. So what's the problem? But then he said, but this is, sorry. Okay, no, yes, here. But this is something of an imitation of the reforms. How much we should stay away from ugliness and the like. He says, yes, he says, of course, I have all the reasons why to let them take these exams, but the answer is no. And why? Because it's an imitation of the reforms. Now, if you look at these Rebbetzins, if you look at these women, you will not see any connection to the reforms. Any connection. They are Orthodox women. They learn halachot. They learn Shulchan Aruch. They daven, they pray, they take part of Orthodox communities. They are women of Orthodox rabbis. They are full Orthodox. But he says if we let them take these exams, it will be imitation of the reforms, and that's why we will not let them take the exams. And then he gives a threat. And what the threat? I sent a message to Mandelblit. Mandelblit is the Yoetz HaMishpati LaMimshala. He was part of this petition to the Supreme Court. I do not do a test for women in any way. There is no such thing. If they force me, if the Supreme Court comes and forces me to do it, I will shut down the whole test system at all. So there is a mess and noise. So nothing, even men will not take these exams. If runners, if they want, that's a bad translation, to take the ministry of, if they want, they can take the Ministry of Education, like there are other degrees, and there, the education, the Ministry of Education, they will do the tests and give them the degree, but not in the chief rabbinate, not a degree of rabbi. A rabbi belongs only to men scholars, of course. That's what he said. So he said, yes, I believe that they know it very well, they know the halachot, and I believe that they are very talented women, but it looks like reforms, and that's why we will never do it. So you see, there is, I would call this answer, this response to the Supreme Court, this is not a halachic answer. This is not an halachic reason why he doesn't want to let them take these exams. It's not an halachic answer, but it's a political answer. I do not want that it looks like reform, that's why I will not let them do it. Thank God that our chief rabbi, and I said it I think 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago in Shul, thank God our chief rabbi is not Moshe Rabbeinu. And or maybe, thank God Moshe Rabbeinu was not our chief rabbi. Because if you look at the Torah, and now if I ask the question, should we let women take the exams? Should we let women learn Torah, learn halachot? My answer is yes. Again, it's of course in opposite to what the chief rabbi said. It's not only that we should let them, I think that we need that there will be women who will be like rabbis, who will paskin halachot, who will be exactly like the men. We must teach them Torah. we must teach them the halachot in order that they will be exactly like men. And it's not a reform. It's something I think that I can find in the Torah. So why? But why? What's the reason? Why we need women as rabbitsons or rabbis, or as you call it? Why do we need them there? I think that if we look back in the Torah, what Moshe Rabbeinu said to the people of Israel, what we read in the Torah, what you read in Halacha, I think we can find at least 3 reasons why we must have women there in Beis Dins, in the rabbinical court. Why do we need women there in Beit HaMidrash? Why do we need women to know Torah and to teach us Torah? So first of all, let's go back to the Torah. Before we read in the poskim, before we give the reasons, let's go back to the Torah. When the people of Israel, now we learn this parashot in the English shiur I give to our community. When we go back to the Torah and we read the Ma'amad Har Sinai, we read the event, the great event, when the people of Israel came to Mount Sinai and they stand before God there. And before God gave them the 10 commandments, he said 3 things to the people of Israel. He invited them to join the covenant, to be in covenant with him, to have a special relationship with him. And among all these words, God said to the people of Israel, you will be a kingdom of priests, you will be my nation, and I will be your God. But to who God said these words? We read in the Torah, on the 3rd month after the Israelites had gone forth from the land of Egypt, on that very day, it means that the very first day of the month, it was Rosh Chodesh, was Chodesh Sivan, they entered the wilderness of Sinai. They came to the desert of Sinai, and there they stood there before God on Mount Sinai. And Moses went up to God. He went up to the mountain to speak with Hashem. The Lord called to him from the mountain, saying, thus shall you say to the house of Jacob, and declare to the children of Israel, you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. And Moshe came down and summoned the elders of the people and put before them all that the Lord had commanded him. All the people answered as one, saying, all that the Lord had spoken, we will do. It's very interesting, very fascinating to hear that Hashem is speaking to the people of Israel. But we have here 2 names in the Torah, 2 names to describe the people of Israel. What are these names? You shall say to the house of Jacob, Beit Yaakov in Hebrew, and declare to the children of Israel, Ko tomar lebeit Yaakov, v'taged libeit Israel. We have 2 phrases, 2 different phrases. The first one is, the people of Israel are called Beit Yaakov. In the second phrase, they are called Bnei Israel. So what's the difference between Beit Yaakov and Bnei Israel? The second difference is that in the beginning, God says, Ko tomar, you shall say. In the second phrase, he says, Vataged. Here in the English translation is declare, but Taged is also in Hebrew to say, but I don't really know the difference between Lomar or Lehagid, but different words. Why does the Torah repeat on it and says it twice? Why does the Torah call the people of Israel in 2 different names, Beit Yaakov and Bnei Israel? So Rashi says, what is Beit Yaakov? Rashi there says, the house of Jacob, Beit Yaakov, this denotes the women. To them you shall speak. Okay, let's see. Beit Yaakov is the women. Who are these people, Bnei Israel, and tell the children of Israel, explain to the men. So first of all, God speaks to the women. Then, only then, after he speaks to the women, then he speaks to the men. Very interesting. Bet Yaakov is the women. But why does he say to Moshe to say to the women? And when he talks about the men, he says, Vataged, declare or explain. What's the difference? So Rashi says, the house of Jacob, this denotes the women. To them you shall speak in gentle language. Kotomar, in Hebrew, in the Lashon HaKodesh, in the Torah, lomar, it's not only to say, but to say it in a very gentle language. Vataged, it's to talk in a hard language. So here in Rashi is to explain to the men, but what to explain? Explain to the men the punishments and the details of the commandments in words that are as hard as wormwood, gidim. Gidim, vataged, Chazal, in the Midrash, they heard in this word, vataged, the word gidim. Gidim is something very hard. Gidim in our body is something that connects the muscle to the bone. So it's something very hard. So when you speak to the women, you should speak gently. When you speak to the men, you should speak in very hard way. First of all, you have to explain them the punishments and the details, and you should speak to them very hard. In other words, when you speak to the men, you shall threaten them, you shall tell them what will happen if they do not obey the laws. And when you speak to the women, you have to do it in a very gentle way. That's why God said it twice to the women and to the men, and you have to speak differently to the women and to the men. So from here, so for the first reason, not the first reason, but here I see the first time that God wants to speak also to the women. He wants to teach them Torah. So, and he says to Moshe to teach them Torah. So that's what I said. Thank God Moshe Rabbeinu was not our chief rabbi, because you see that Moshe Rabbeinu himself, he taught the women Torah, but he did it in their way. It's very fascinating to see that the women come first here in the Pasuk. So first of all, according to the Torah, it's not that we find that we need to find a justification why we should let women learn Torah. It's the opposite. We should find the justification why we teach men Torah, because the first who God spoke to them were the women and not the men. So they came first. So he taught them first Torah. So thank God Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't our chief rabbi, because he taught the women Torah, but he taught them in their way, in a very gentle way. We see here the difference. What can you imagine why there is a difference in the way you teach them Torah? The women, you can teach them in a very gentle way. The men, you should explain them the punishments. Why? What's the difference? I understand, I believe, that the women, when you tell them that that's what God wants, they do it in a very gentle way. They understand what's the holiness of the Torah. You know, the women didn't sin in the golden calf. That's why they got Rosh Chodesh. That's why you have this Rosh Chodesh group, because Rosh Chodesh is the holiday of the women, because they didn't sin there in golden calf. So they take it, they take the laws, they understand it. They're maybe according to rabbis, we have rabbis who say that women are more spiritual than men. So that's why you can speak to them in a very gentle way, and they accept it. But when you speak to the men, and you speak with them, and you tell them, oh, now you have to observe Shabbat, now you cannot eat pig, now you cannot eat milk and meat together, it's very hard for them to accept it. To tell men what to do, it's very hard for him, maybe. That's why you need to threaten him. That's why you need to explain the punishments in a very hard way. So it's much easier to speak with the women, to give them the Torah, than the men. So that's why maybe God says to Moshe, first of all, give it to the women. And you can speak with them in very gentle way. But when you speak with the men, you have to threaten them, you have to explain all the punishments. So you see, the women came first. From this verse of the Torah, Kot Omar LeBeit Yaakov, you know the organization Beit Yaakov was founded in 1917. Sarah Schneerer was the lady, the woman who established Beit Yaakov organization. And this organization was a school for women, for girls. And there they learned Torah, they learned Mishnah, they learned Parashat Shavua, they learned Musar, these books of good behavior and moral books. And that's what they learned. And here I found a picture of little girls in Lodz, Poland, 1934. Beit Yaakov. This is the school of Beit Yaakov. And here you see all the girls. They came from very religious homes, and they learned Torah. So thank God we have it here in 20th century that women started learning Torah. Girls started learning Torah, halachot. And of course, we need to encourage them to continue and learn Torah. So, of course, I think that in the Sephardic world now they have a school which is called Beit Margalit or something like that. But Beit Yaakov, this is the organization until today in the Haredi world. They send their girls to this school, and it's called after the verse we read, Ko Tomar LeBeit Yaakov. These are the women, and they come first. But why? What's the reason? Why it is so important that women will be scholars, will learn Torah? Why? Why it's so important that they will be there? By the way, in the end of the Torah, we find it again. In the Parashat Nitzavim, it's the end of the book of Dvarim, 3 parashot before the end of the Torah. We read that Moshe invites all the people of Israel to stand before him and before God. Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem. And he calls to the man, to the children, and to the women as well, to stand there before God and come into this covenant with God. So women are there too. In the Bible, we find the women were prophets. We see Devorah, she was a prophet. We see Hulda, we'll talk about her in a few minutes. And we will find that according to our sages, Esther, she had Ruach HaKodesh. Ruth, if you look at the heroes in the Bible, we see many women. Miriam, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, our mothers. You see women there. And they are standing there with the man, and they lead, and they are the heroes of the story, and they are and they get prophecies from God. They are there. They are part of the leadership of Israel. So even here, when they stand in Mount Sinai, they are part of the group who are being taught the Torah. Why? Why it's so important that they will be there? So the first reason that I want to give is that when we stood there in Mount Sinai, we had a covenant with God. Who are in this covenant with God? Who comes into this covenant with God? And the answer of the Torah is, if we go back to the Psukim, God says to Moshe, here, Vayikra elav, God, the Lord called to him from the mountain, saying, thus shall you say to the house of Jacob, the Beit Yaakov, and declare to the children of Israel that you will all be a kingdom of priests. If God says that we will all become kingdom of priests, it means that we are all equal there. Before God, we are all equal. Men, women, elders, youngsters, young people, we are all equal before God. We are all priests. And I know, after the sin of the golden calf, God changed the Bechorim, the firstborn's children, with the Kohanim, so we got priests who worked in the temple. But before the golden calf, before they sinned there, the goal of the Torah the goal of God was that the whole people of Israel become priests. They will be priests. They will serve God. and we will be all equal in that. And that's why when Moshe Rabbeinu said these words to the people of Israel, the Torah said that all the people answered as one, saying, all that the Lord had spoken, we will do. All the people of Israel answered. The Torah says they all, women and men, together, all of them, they said yes. God needed to hear the answer yes from all the people of Israel. Because you can come into this covenant with God only when you want, when you agree, when you want to be part of this covenant. And that's why he applied also to the women, because they are equal to the men. And they need to understand it in their way. So to them, he talked gently. To the men, he talked in a hard way. But they all understood in equal way what is a covenant with God. And they came into this covenant. And that's why the first reason why women should learn Torah, because if we want that they will be part of this covenant with God, they need to know what does it mean? What does it mean to be in covenant with God? What's the meaning of what is Torah? What is the Torah? They want to be part of the Torah. They want to be part of this world. So we need to let them, and we need them there. We want that they will be part of this world, because we are all equal before God, and we are all in covenant with Him together. So they need to be there. So, in many centuries ago, many years ago, when they didn't know how to read, when they were not learned enough, they didn't go out. They had all their life, they had to just to take care of the children, to raise the children, and to take care of the house, and they were not learned, they were not scholars. So yes, unfortunately, they were not part of that. They could only learn from their husbands. But today, when women go out, when women learn outside, when they have degrees in universities, when they learn, when they're exactly like men, we should let them, we should want that they will be part of this covenant exactly like us. I said us men because I'm a man, but exactly like the men. They should be there. And we find it in the halacha as well. There is a very interesting phrase, paragraph in the Gemara. The Gemara talks about smicha. What is smicha? Smicha regarding the sacrifice. When you bring an offering to the temple, usually what you do, you take your hands and you put it on the head of the offering, on the korban. And the Gemara asks the question whether women should put their hands, should they make smicha on the offering? And the answer of the Gemara is no. The women are not obligated to do this smicha. But, Amar Rabbi Yossi said in the Gemara, Abba Elazar related to me the following incident. That's what he said to me. On one occasion, we had a calf for a peace offering, Korban Shlamim, and we brought it into the women's courtyard, Ezrat Nashim, in the temple, and women placed their hands on it. They made smicha. We did this not because there is an obligation of placing hands in the case of women, but in order to please the women by allowing them to sacrifice an offering in all of its particulars as men do. What did he say here? He said, okay, we will talk. I was asked in the chat whether shouldn't be any discrimination between women and men. Can they become rabbis? Yes or not? We will talk about it in a minute. But here we see in the halacha that the Gemara says that they let women to put their hands to make smicha on the korban, not because there is an obligation that women will do it, but we wanted to please the women, to let them to be exactly like men. Why? Because they want to. They want to be part of Judaism. They want to be part of the tradition. They want to be part of this world. So if they want, we should open the door for them. We should let them, because they are equal to us in this covenant with God. And that's why we found in halacha, again, we found here, la'asot nachat ruach lenashim, to please the women. You know, in ancient times, especially in the Ashkenaz, there was a minhag that a woman who was in time of nida, she was impure, she didn't come to shul. And why is that? Because she felt that the shul is a very holy place, and if she has a tum'ah, she is in nida time, nida period of time, she cannot come into shul. But what happened in the, so it was in Ashkenaz. It's very fascinating to read it. Women didn't come to shul when they were impure. But what happened in the high holidays? In the high holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Simchat Torah, all the people of the Kehillah came to shul, celebrate together. So the women who were impure then they couldn't come, they stayed at home. They felt very rejected. They wanted to be part of that too. One of the great poskim, the rabbis there, Rabbi Israel Iserland, he wrote a book named Trumat Hadeshen, and he wrote this, Ve'al hanashim be'et nidotam, concerning the women when they are impure, they are nida. Emet hitarti le'em bayamim hanoraim, in the high holidays, I said to them that they are allowed to come to shul. In these times, שרבות מתאספות לבית כנסת, לשמוע תפילה וקריאה, in this time when many women come to shul to hear the chazan, to pray, to hear how we read the Torah, I let them to go to shul. I allow them to come into shul. Why? Because mishum nachat ruach lenashim. Because to please them. לעשות להם נחת רוח. כי היו להם לצוון רוח ולמחלת לב, שהכל מתאספין להיות בציפור, והם יעמדו בחוץ. If we order them to stay outside, that all the women will go in, all the men will go in, they will be outside, how will they feel? So in order to please them, I let them to come into shul. And that's why we found it in the halacha, that women, even when they are impure and they are in nidah time, they come into shul. And no, and what's the reason? Just because we should let them be part of the tradition, be part of what we are doing in shul, be part of the Torah. So why should I let women learn Torah? Because to let them be part of that. If they want and they stay outside and will not let them go in and learn with us Torah, how will they feel? That they are rejected, that they are not part of this covenant with God? We should let them learn Torah. You know, it was very, I was challenged by this halacha, and in the beginning, when I came to our lovely community with our lovely people in the community, I started my job here. It was August 2012, 8 years ago, in August. And I, in August, in the summer, and I remember we had there, after 2 months, we had the high holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and then it was Simchat Torah. And I was celebrating Simchat Torah in the Kehillah. It was my first Simchat Torah in the Kehillah. And we were dancing there I would dance there with all the men, with the Sifrei Torah, singing, dancing. And then one guy came to me with the Sefer Torah in his hands. And he asked me, Rabbi, can I take this Sefer Torah to the women's section and to dance with them? It was the first question I was asked in shul. And I said, yes, take the Torah. If they want to dance with it, so take the Sefer Torah, and they will dance with the Sefer Torah. 5 minutes later, one guy who was standing there on the bima started shouting, who let them take a Sefer Torah? Who let the women dance with the Sefer Torah? What the first time? I was looking at him. I was shocked in the beginning, but I raised my hand and I said, it's me. I let them do it. And since then, every Simchat Torah, this guy comes to me, he asking me, can I take a Sefer Torah to the women? I said, yes, if they want to dance with Sefer Torah. But if you go to many, many shuls, you will see that women are not allowed to dance with Sefer Torah. And what's the reason? Because they are impure, they are nida, and it's not acceptable that women will dance with Sefer Torah. But I say no. If they want to be part of this celebration, I try to imagine how is to be a woman in Simchat Torah. How is to be a woman? To stand there in Ezrat Nashim, to look at all the men dancing, singing with the Sefer Torah, celebrating, and what do the women do? They just look at them and do nothing. And I try to imagine, how do they feel there? They want to be part of this celebration. So why not? They want to be happy, to celebrate with the Torah. They are part of the Torah. God had spoken to them too, so what's the problem? So I let them take the Sefer Torah in order to please the woman. It's not a bad thing to please somebody else. It's a good thing. In order they want to be part of that, so let them. We learn another halacha from this Gemara, from this concept of to please the woman, the women. Tosfot is saying them. You know, there is machloket, disagreement between Ashkenazim and Sfaradim. If a woman, you know, women are not obligated in mitzvot aseh shazman grama. Mitzvot that come from time to time, like a shofar, like lulav and etrog, the four species in Sukkot, etc. Mitzvot that come from time to time, they are not obligated in this mitzvot. But what happens if women do want to make this mitzvot? They do want to blow the shofar. They do want to take the four species of Arbat Aminim of Sukkot. They do want to do that. Are they allowed to do it? And the answer is yes, they are allowed to do it. But the question is now, can they bless? Can they say the bracha on this mitzvot? According to the Sfaradim, the answer is no. The answer is no. If you open a Sfaradic Siddur, you will see there that if it's a Sfaradic Siddur for women, they will not say the brachot of Kriyat Shema, for example. They will say the brachot, but without mentioning the Shem Hashem. They will say Baruch Atah Ma'ariv Aravim, Baruch Atah Ohev Amo Yisrael. They will not say Baruch Atah Hashem. Why? Because according to the Sfaradic halacha, women do not bless on this mitzvot that come from time to time. They can do it, they can observe this mitzvot, but they do not bless. But according to the Ashkenazi halacha, they can bless. Even though they are not obligated in this mitzvot, they can say, they can have this blessing. They can say. Why? That's what Tosfot said. If they want to be part, they want to be like us in this mitzvot, although they are not obligated in this mitzvot, they can say, they can observe this mitzvot, and they can bless exactly like us. Why? To please the women. They want to be like us? Bakasha, be like us. You are part of this Torah. We are equal in the mitzvot. We are equal in the Torah. So, of course, if they can bless and can do it. More than that, you know that to blow, usually we don't blow the shofar on Shabbat. We cannot blow the shofar on Shabbat. We cannot blow the shofar in a regular Yom Tov. Only on Rosh Hashanah, because this is the specific mitzvah of the day, we do it. But now, we should ask, can women blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah for themselves? Can women blow the shofar themselves? Shofar, usually we don't blow. If you are not obligated to blow the shofar, so how can we let you blow the shofar? But even though, although that women are not obligated in this mitzvah, the poskim say, we can let women take a shofar and blow it by themselves on Rosh Hashanah. Why? Because we should let them to be part of the mitzvah of the day. And even though it's a halacha, it's not a halacha, it's melacha, it's something that we usually do not know. In spite of the fact that it's something that we usually don't know, we should let them blow the shofar exactly like us. Why? To please the women. They are part of this event, they're part of this mitzvah. They are exactly like us. So this is the first reason when we we hear that there are halachic implications to this concept, this reason to please the women because they are part of this world. And exactly the same thing when we come to the world of the Torah. I have a friend, she's a journalist. Her name is Chen Artzis-Roll, and she wrote a book about the new feminist rabbitzins. I don't know how to call them rabbitzins. And she wrote a book on them, and she wrote at the beginning, the preface to this book, she wrote her experience, the first experience when she opened a page of the Gemara. When she opened the Gemara, and she's she's a journalist in the Yediot Acharonot. She writes very, very beautiful articles, and she's very learned a woman. And look what she read, how she described her experience when she opened, the first time in her life, she opened the Gemara. The first moment my eyes met a Gemara page is an unforgettable moment for me. The insult burned my throat. The strange design of the page and the fact that the language was so foreign to me made me shudder. I could not even utter the Aramaic words in my mouth, certainly not out loud. I do not know if it's the right translation, but I believe we understand. The understanding suddenly permitted me. I am a religious woman with no religious knowledge. I was educated and raised in the best institutions of religious Zionism, and yet there is no difference between me and my secular friends when we are faced with a Talmudic page. We are all equally ignorant. That's what she felt. She felt ignorant when she opened the page of the Gemara. She felt that she's not part of this religious world. And she said, I want to be part of this world too. I don't want to imitate you, the man. I just want to be part of the Torah world. I don't want to be rejected. I don't want to stay outside. And that's why I believe we need to let them to learn whatever they want in the Torah. Because God Tomar LeBeit Yaakov, they are part of the covenant with God, they are part of the Torah, and even just if we just do it just to please them, because they want to feel part of that, yes, we should let them be part of that. This is the first reason why we should let women learn Torah. So what's the limit? Do we want that they will be rabbis exactly like men? Let's go now a step forward, make a step forward to the second reason, and we will learn why I believe that there are parts in the Torah that we should, we should let women be the rabbis there. And now, you know what, I will say it now. 10 years ago, I believe it happened 10 years ago, when I was in yeshiva there, and I was avrech in the yeshiva, and I went to Machon Pu'ah in Jerusalem to learn how to pasken halachot in Hilchot Nida, and especially in Mar'ot Damim. What is this? Machon Pu'ah in Jerusalem is a very special and important institute who deals with problems in Yeluda and Poriyut. How do you call it?
Fertility and birth.
Fertility, yeah, thank you. Fertility, yes. Poriyut. And there we took a course there to learn how to pasken halachot in Mar'ot Damim. A woman who is nida, in time of nida, she sees blood and she takes the bdikot, all the tests she do to purify herself, and sometimes she's not clean enough, and she needs to take this blood of what she has on this paper, on this little piece of cloth. She checked herself, and it's not really clean, she needs to take it to the rabbi, and the rabbi needs to look at it and to decide whether it's blood or not. I took a special course there in Machon Pua to learn this material, to learn this stuff. And I found myself there, sitting there with 10 rabbis. We were all men, of course, sitting there in one Monday in the morning, and for an hour we just look at cloths, little pieces of cloths with things I cannot describe. It was red, yellow, things that came from women. Women brought it to this institute in order to ask them if it's pure or not pure. And I found myself sitting there for an hour looking at this stuff. And I was asking myself, why, for God's sake, a man should look at it? Why, for God's sake, a man should decide whether it's blood or not blood? I thank God, I've never experienced dam nida, blood of nida. I've never experienced this experience. Who knows better than me if it's blood or not blood, if it's blood of nida or no? A woman. Of course, a woman knows it better than me. So why, for God's sake, I'm sitting here and I learn how to pasken halachot in this halachot, this thing? Why don't we have women who can pasken in this halachot? And women it will be more convenient to a woman to go to a rabbitzin to ask the question and not to a rav to show him these things. So I asked the rabbi there who taught us this halachot, I asked him, why, for God's sake, we do it and not women? When he heard my question, he looked at me I remember his eyes, he was very angry with me. He didn't answer me, but I saw in his eyes that he thought at that moment that I'm a reform. I wanted something to change the halachot, that women will start passing. But when I came back to my yeshiva, and I asked this question, my Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Rabinovich Zichrono Livracha, his answer was, he was a great posek. His answer was, of course, we should encourage women to pass halachot in this stuff. Of course, they know better than us if it's blood or not, and women will come to them and not to us. So you see, this is in the Torah. This is a group of halachot that I want that women will be the rabbis there and not the men. And I think that we can find many other halachot that we will prefer that women will pass an halachot there and not men, because women can understand that better than men. Another example, when we need to decide how tall will be the mechitza in shul. How tall should be the mechitza? And so you will hear many rabbis who say it should be 2 meters, it should be that, it should be that, it should be that. But these rabbis, has one of them ever sat there behind the mechitza? A rabbi, a man, does he know what's the feeling of sitting behind the mechitza and to be separated, to be far from all what's going on in shul? It happened to one of our congregants. He told me when he went to bat mitzvah, to celebrate bat mitzvah to one of his relatives, and they celebrated bat mitzvah in shul. When all women went into the shul, and she read the Torah, they had the special tefillah there, and they put all the men in Ezrat Nashim. and he came to me and said, man, you know, I have my opinion where the mechitza should be like that and like that, but it's the first time in my life that I was sitting there behind the mechitza, and I experienced this experience. What is the experience? What's the feeling of sitting there behind the mechitza and to feel that you are not part of the celebration there, and you stand there very far from your son or your daughter, and you cannot be part of this celebration. It's very hard. So he told me, before you pass and before you decide how tall should be the mechitza, you should feel how is to sit behind the mechitza. But many, many rabbis had never sat there behind the mechitza. So how can you pass an halacha in it? It was a request of one of our women in our kehila. Her daughter, her son, became bar mitzvah boy, and she asked me. She said to me, "It's very hard for me that you celebrate there when you read the Torah and you bless him, and his father is standing there with him." She came to me and said, "I want to be there with him too. He's my son. I want to celebrate with him too, there on the bima. I don't want to read the Torah. I will not say a word, but I just want to stand there with him. Can I? I want to be part of this celebration." I answered her that yes, I understand that I understand her that she wants to be part of the celebration, but if she wants to meet me next Shabbat, that I will be here next Shabbat and I will not be fired, so she should stay in Nistarat Nashim. What did I mean? I mean that yes, if it depends on me, I will let her do it. Just come in, stand with your son when he is reading the Torah. Just be part of the celebration. You want to be part of it, but because it's not acceptable today, so we need to wait until it will be acceptable, more acceptable. But yes, they want to be part of that. They can paskan halachot because they understand more than us how is to sit there behind the mechitza. Another example, kisui rosh, head cloth. Women who put head cloth. There are rabbis who say yes, they should put this kind of head cloth and or cover their head with something else. But Daphne came to me once and said to me, how dare you? How can you write halachot for us? Do you understand? Do you have a clue? What is for a woman to cover her hair, to put this headcloth on their head? So how can you write an halacha? How can you pass an halacha if you don't experience, if you don't know how is the feeling of this? And that's why I believe there are several parts of the Torah that there we should let women decide on tzniut. How long should be the sleeves? What kind of a dress or pants or whatever? Women, you decide. You understand tzniut of nashim better than me. So you decide. I don't need to deal with that. So yes, there are certain parts of the Torah that we should let women paskan halachot and not men. But more than that, I think that there is something that women can bring to the Torah world that men cannot bring, cannot have. And here I go back what we saw there, that to women you should talk in a gentle way, and to men you should speak with to threat with threats, to say these words to them in a hard way, because these are two aspects, two different ways of how do they look at the Torah. Women look at the Torah in a very gentle way. Men look in a very hard way. Men, we have laws. We have to observe all the laws in a very tough way. But women, they are more spiritual. They have a different point of view of the Torah. And here is something I learned from Rabbi Sachs. Rabbi Sachs said he found in the Bible, the whole Bible, that we have two, the Torah, the word Torah comes with two other words in the Bible. The first phrase is Torat Emet. Torat Emet natan lanu. Torat Emet, the Malachi, the Pasuk in Malachi says, you see here in the slide, you see here, Torat Emet Aita Befiu. This is from Sefer Malachi. Another phrase is not Torat Emet, but Torat Chesed. For example, Pia Patcha Bechokma v'Torat Chesed Aleshona. When the Bible talks to women, when it speaks about women, he uses the phrase Torat Chesed, Torah of kindness. When he speaks about, the Bible speaks about men, he speaks about Torat Emet. And what's the difference between emet and kindness? Chesed and emet. Emet is black and white. Emet, if it's true, it's true. If it's not true, it's not true. It's a very hard way of thinking. Chesed is a very gentle way. You look, you feel it. It's not just, it's not black and white. You feel the complexity of the issue. You understand that there's gray between the black and the white. You understand, you are more gentle with the Torah. Rabbi Sachs said, when we open the Torah and we look how the Torah describes Chesed and Emet, we will always find that Chesed comes before Emet. For example, the 13 attributes of God, ויעבור השם על פניו ויקרא, השם השם אל רחום וחנון, ערך אפיים ורב, חסד ואמת. Chesed should always come before Emet. The gentle way should always come before the hard way. And that's why he said, God had spoken at the beginning to the women because this is Torah Chesed, and only after that he spoke with the men because this is Torah Emet. Where do we find it? Very fascinating paragraph in the Talmud. The Talmud speaks about it now. We in a week, and next Thursday, we will fast on Tisha B'Av. When the Torah, the Gemara speaks about the destruction of the temple. In the days of Jeremiah, when the temple was still there built, there was a king named Yoshiyahu, and he found a scroll of a Torah, Sefer Torah, in the temple, and he didn't know how to read it. So he sent it to Huldah Nevi'ah to read from him the Torah. And the Gemara asks, why didn't he send it to Jeremiah, who lived in the same time? Why? Jeremiah was the head of the Beis Din. Why did he send it to Huldah and not to Jeremiah? And this is the Gemara here. But how could Yoshiyahu himself ignore Jeremiah and said to Huldah the Torah? The sages of the school of Rabbi Sheila say, because women are more compassionate. And he hoped that what she would tell them would not be overly harsh. Yes, Huldah and Jeremiah, they read the same Torah, but the way they read it was different. Jeremiah read the Torah in a very harsh way, very hard way. And that's what we read in his prophecies. When he comes to the people of Israel, he says to them, oh, you don't obey the God, and that's why you will be punished. It's a very hard way. But when you come to a woman, when she reads the Torah, she reads it in a very gentle way, Torah Chesed. And that's why Yoshiyahu, Melech, the king, preferred to send the Torah to Huldah in order to hear more gentle words. So women can bring something to the Torah that we men cannot bring. They can bring the Chesed, the gentle way of bringing the halachot of the Torah, and that's why we need them, because they bring different voice to the Torah, not the way we read. And I teach many women, I teach in many Beit Midrash of women, and I see when I teach men, when I teach women, I see the differences. There's something else, I cannot explain it, more gentle, more smooth, something that when you learn Torah with women, it's different. And that's why it's very important because they bring different voice to the Torah, voice of kindness, voice of chesed to the Torah. And that's why, by the way, when we celebrate Shavuot, we read Megillat Ruth before we read the Torah. Because when we read the Torah, we read how God gave us the 10 Commandments. And it's the Torah Temet. Before that, we read Megillat Ruth. Megillat Ruth, it's the Torah Chesed. It's the Torah of kindness. And we need to read first, to bring first the Chesed, and only then to read the Emet. So this is the voice that women can bring to the Torah. And that's why I want them there in Beit HaMidrash learning Torah exactly like the men. The third reason why I want women there in the Beit HaMidrash. And to understand it, I want to take you again 15 years ago or 14 years ago. It was the first year to my marriage with Daphna. And I was Avrech, very young Avrech. I was 23, 24 years old after 5 years in the yeshiva. I think I told you this story once. And it was Friday at noon. Friday noon, we were cooking something for Shabbat together. And it happens in the kitchen, a dairy spoon fell into a meaty pot, and it's something that happened. And my Daphne came to me and said, "Oh, what happened at dairy and meaty? What should I do with the dish? What should I do with the pot? What should I do with the spoon?" I looked at her and I said, "I have no idea." And she looked at me she was very surprised by that. And she asked me, "You were sitting here 5 years in the yeshiva, you're learning Torah, and you don't know what to do with the spoon that fell into it. It's the basic of the Torah. It's what to do with meat and milk. How don't you do it? How don't you know it?" And I said to her, "I learned Gemara. I know how to understand a very complex sugya in the Talmud, but I don't know this halachot." So she asked me, "So what should I do?" I told her, "You know what? Make a phone call to your mother. She will know the answer." And that's what she did. She called her mother, and your mother gave the answer. Since then, I remember this story, and I understood something very important. There is a Torah of the books, and there is the Torah of life. Men, yes, we know the Torah of the books. We learn in yeshivot, we learn Torah, but the Torah of life, many, many times, it's quite different from the Torah of the books. What to know, practical, in the life, in our lives, sometimes it's different from what you read in the books. You need to know how to apply what you read in the books to life, how to translate the halachot to the real life. And women usually know the halachot. That's what, at least in the last generation, they know exactly the halachot of the life. Not because they learn it in the books, because how did they remember their mothers? How did they do? And their fathers, this is the Torah of life. And this aspect of the Torah of life that belongs to women, we found it again in our sources. Sefer Mishlei, Shema beni musar avicha, my son, hear the discipline of your father. Ve'al titosh Torat imecha. Do not forsake the instruction, the Torah of your mother. The Torah belongs in this pasuk to the mother. Another pasuk from Sefer Mishlei. Chochmat nashim banta beita. The wisdom of women built her house. The wisdom of women, they know how to bring Torah to life. They know how to fulfill, to live the life of Torah. They know how to do it. So men, yes, they know how to read the books, how to learn Gemara. But the Torah Chaim belongs to women. I found very beautiful commentary of Rabbi Al-Sheikh, who lived in Tzfat 500 years ago. He said, what's the meaning of this pasuk, Shema b'ni musar avicha ve'al titosh Torat imecha? Musar avicha, he said, this is the written Torah. We get from our fathers the written Torah. They teach us how to learn, how to read the Torah, with the tamim, with the tune. We know that. But Torah sheba'al peh, this is Torat imecha. Torat imecha, mother, is the Torah, the oral Torah. The oral Torah is not written in any book. The oral Torah we get from the last generation. We get it by heart from them. In life, when you go out, your mother, when you are a child, your mother teaches you how to say Shema Yisrael. Your mother teaches you how to put tzitzit and to put kippah on. Yes, when you open the Parshat Shavua and you learn, usually you learn with your father. But the mother teaches you how to observe the mitzvot in life, how to live Torah, not just how to learn Torah. That's what Rabbi Moshe al-Sheikh said. The Torah is Musar Avicha. It's very hard. Torah Emet. It's written. We cannot add anything in that. What it's written, that's what you read. But the oral Torah, the Torah of life, it's something that flows with life. It's changeable in life with life. This is halacha. Halacha from the word lehalech, to go with, to flow. This is halacha. This is Torah b'chaim. And that's why if women, they want to be part of the Torah world, yes, we have to let them, because they live it. They live in their homes. So of course today, when men are equal to women in the duties of the house, and yes, we cook together, we do exactly together, yes, we become, we together do it, so the men, we also live the Torah, Torah Chaim, not only the written Torah, but on the other hand, women should be part of that too, and they should read the Torah with us. We become equal in that. But you see here in the sources, we see that there is a special Torah of the women, not only Torah Chesed, but Torah Chaim, the Torah of life. And that's why, 3 reasons, if you ask me if we should let women take these exams, if we should let women learn Torah, to open the Midrash for women, the answer is big, big, big yes. Why? First of all, they want to be they're part of the covenant with God. And learning Torah is part of this covenant. So they should be part of that too. Lasot, to please the women. Second, they can bring different voice that we are not used to. Torah Chesed. They can open us new way of thinking. Third thing, it's Torah Chaim. They learn Torah, they bring it to life in their way, and it's beautiful. That's why I want them to learn Torah with me. And you know, if I open halacha, we talked about Moshe Rabbeinu. Now let's talk about Rambam, Maimonides. Rambam, he wrote it too. And he wrote in Ilchot Yesodei Torah, Lechem ubasar, bread and meat. What is bread and meat in our spiritual life? Uleida ha'asur v'amutar. One must know what is forbidden and what is permitted. And similar to this of the rest of the commandments. This is bread and meat. And although these matters were pronounced by the sages as of lesser importance, they have precedence as a study, because we need to learn it at the beginning. Why? Because because accessible to all, they are accessible to all. Listen what he says. The Gemara, the laws, the commandments are accessible to all, little and great, men and women. So Rambam himself, Maimonides himself, said that women can learn Torah. They can learn exactly like men. All the laws, the Gemara, all the Torah will, they can be part of it. So if Rambam said it, how can come the chief rabbi and say, I will not let them take these exams? I want to finish this slideshow with what Rabbi Aaron Lichtenstein said. Rabbi Aaron Lichtenstein was the head of Rosh Yeshiva of Har Etzion Yeshiva. And he wrote an article about the world of the women in the Torah world. And he said there, what we said in this shiur, he said the same thing. He said, I think a rabbi should ask himself and at least try to imagine what things look like from the other side of the mechitza of partition. Try to imagine how things look like from their side, not only from your side. One must be equipped with the right sensitivity to the allegation heard, and not automatically repel any claim, and present the woman as if she is mostly rebellious and heretical. If I were a woman, says Rabbi Lichtenstein, if I were a woman, I would expect my arbitrator to take care of his spirit, to be sensitive, to be honest, and to know and understand both courage and honesty. That's what he said. If I were a woman, I would expect my rabbi my posek, to be sensitive to the need of the women who are sitting there in the other side of the mechitza, to feel what is to be rejected from celebrations, from mitzvot, from shul, from be part of that. What is to be alien to a page of Gemara? And only then, when you have this sensitivity, you can pass an halachot if they can do it or they can't do it. Only then. Because yes, there are things today that we usually don't know. We don't let women, for example, be called to the Torah or to read the Torah. It's a subject for a special shiur. But usually we don't do it. But yes, but you have to be sensitive to understand why they want to do it. You have to be sensitive enough to understand why they want to give a sermon in shul, why they want to be part of this celebration. So yes, there are things we will have to say, no, I cannot allow you, but at least be sensitive, understand their needs. And you know, another story that I had in our shul, it was 7 years ago. The first Chag Shavuot in our shul, I wanted to arrange Tikkun Leil Shavuot, learning Torah for all night. And one woman came to me and said, I want to give a shiur too, in this night. And I said, of course, why not? You are a very learned woman. You can teach us many things, interesting things. So, bakasha. But then when I published the schedule of the night, someone again came to me and said, how can you let a woman give a shiur in shul? How can you do it? It's against the law, it's against the Jewish law, it's against. And the Va'ad didn't let me do it. So I didn't have any choice because, you know, I tried to convince them, but they didn't let me to let her give a shiur in this night. So she had to give the shiur outside. She was very angry with the shiur. And I said to her, you know what, let's do not fight on that. Again, let's do not fight with them about that. You give the shiur outside. And then a year later, you know what I did? Again, I published again. I arranged this night, and I published the schedule and said she's going to give the shiur in this night and this time there. And again, they came to me, no. But now they said she will not do it outside. She will do it in a different room in shul. Okay. The third year, I did again the same thing. I published the schedule, and I said she's going to give a shiur at 11 o'clock at night. And that time, they let her doing it. So she gave. So till today, we have a shiur which is given by a woman in Tikkun Leil Shavuot. And I understood. Yes, she wants to give. She can teach Torah in a different way that I don't know how to teach in this way. She brought new sources. She brought her own world. It was beautiful. And we learned from her Torah. And what's the problem? There is no problem. It's just in our mind. No, we should let her. 3 reasons. Torah Chaim, Torah Chesed, to please the women. Lasot nachat ruach lenashim. And I think that we will all get
Benefit.
yes, we will all be elevated by women who will come and give us Torah, teach us Torah. We will all be elevated by halachot that will be paskened by women. And that's why I believe women should be part of the world of the Torah. Women should teach us Torah, and that's why I'm so happy that you have this meeting every Rosh Chodesh. When you learn Torah together, you learn history, you learn Torah, you learn everything. It's so important to us. It's so important to us for our world, the rabbinical world, that you will be part of our rabbi. Yes, Nechama.
Why don't the women let to be rabbis? Why does the rabbi not let the women to be rabbis?
We should let them. We should let them. I believe that one day we will have shuls with a rabbi, male rabbi, and a female rabbi for the women. Yes, I believe that we will have it. Because why not? Why can't the woman be a rebbetzin is not only the rabbi's wife. A rebbetzin can be a rabbi by herself. And yes, she will be a rabbi for women and men. If men feel that they need to get advice from her. So why not? I believe that one day we will have it, and I think in Jerusalem we had we can find this kind of shuls that we have there a rabbi and a rebbitzin. A rebbitzin, not his wife, but a special woman, which she is in charge of the community, and she is, yes, she's like a rabbi for the women. Why not? Why not? I don't see any reason why not to let them doing it, but it takes time because we are not used to it. We are not used to it. We had, there was a story in Jerusalem of a rabbit and a rabbi, a female rabbi. He wanted to be a rabbi there in Shul of Ramban, the Shul of Rabbi Ben Ilau. She was a rabbi there for 3 years, and they decided after 3 years, they decided not to continue with her. And the question, she asked them why. And they said to her, because when we think about rabbi, we don't see you as the character of the rabbi. A woman is not a rabbi. A rabbi, we want a man. But it takes time. She understood that it takes time until we get used to it. When we, it will come. I'm sure it will come, and they will become rabbis. Yes, and I want them to be rabbis in the communities. So not like reforms, not because we want to be like them, because we want that they will be part of that, and they can bring their own world to the Torah world, and yes, that they can enrich us with so many important things. Yes, be with us. And Monday we will have a chief rebbitzin, not only chief rabbi. Who knows? Who knows? And it's very important. And another point I forgot. It's very important to put women there in Beit Din. Beit Din, who deals the dayanim, who deals with agunot, mesuravot get, the women who are refused, their husbands do not want to give them the get or get divorced from them, and they are agunot. It's very important that women will be there, because many dayanim do not understand how much they suffer, these women, and they are not sensitive enough to their sorrow. That's why we need women there to be dayaniyot, to be paskot halacha, to be there in Beit Din. It's very important to the Beit Din and to the whole people of Israel that the women will be there. So you are all invited to learn Torah, to come to shiurim, to learn more and more, to learn halacha, parashat Shavua. It's very important for us. And you were the first, remember, Beit Yaakov, you were the first there in Mount Sinai. We came after. So you are the first who need to learn Torah. Thank you all.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Susan.
Yes, so Rav Ido, before you go, just a few minutes. This has been an inspirational evening. I want you to know, first of all, before you came, Elaine explained to us many of the midot of Eshet Kyle, and then we had a wonderful exposition from Vivian about the significance of the 9th of Av throughout history, and she's really gone to great detail and effort. Thank you so much, Vivian, for doing that. And this, what we've had tonight, is really the joy of a Rosh Chodesh meeting that we should have, and you, Rav Ido, have added to it immensely by going on to the other side of the fence and explaining from that point of view. We appreciate the kindness of your approach, and I'm sure all of us will leave. Well, we don't have to travel anywhere, we're all at home, but with our heads held a little higher in our Jewish values and worth and what it is to be a woman. And we're inspired by what you've said, and I'm sure we will take on the responsibility of what you have offered to us with greater awareness. So thank you so much for being with us and explaining in such a very interesting and meaningful way. So I hope everyone's had a wonderful evening. You should all be well, a good Chodesh to you, Menachem Av, and we look forward to being together probably on Zoom next month, but who knows? So thank you. A round of you can unmute, and a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Very
Thank you very
interesting.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Well
Litra.
said, Susan. Thank you,
Elaine,
Rabbi.
now you are the host. So
Yes, I saw. I saw. I understood.
okay.
Thanks.
So I leave you now. Thank you all, and keep
Thank
with
you.
this. Continue with this
you.
Rosh Chodesh meeting in Zoom. It's not easy at all.
No.
It's not easy, but keep doing this. It's very important.
We will. We will.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for coming. I hope you enjoyed the refreshments you brought along. And God willing, we'll all be together again next month. That's the most important thing, in good health.
Amen.
Be well,
Amen.
everyone. Take
Thank
care.
you very much.
Thank
Thank you, and thank you for making
Be
me
well,
so
everyone.
welcome.
Keep